Well, welcome in, Braves fans. My name is Bryce Coon alongside Logan Whaley. We welcome you into the Chopaholic, where the addiction that we have for this team, it might be on the rocks. I guess that's a beautiful pun there, Logan, for a lot of different ways you wanted to go with this.
Hey,
I didn't even mean it like that, but welcome in. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel. Where, Logan, let's just be real. 15 minutes before we hit record, the Braves have announced they've placed Spencer Strider on the IL. They've called up no offense, some random pitcher that they acquired from somewhere off the scrap heap. And, I had someone text me, a Braves fan in the area down here in Baton Rouge. They were like, whose grave did we build Truist Park on? Like who the extension, hey, here's a Baton Rouge delicacy. They're building a walk-ons restaurant in the Battery. Apparently, there's a burial ground they have built this on. So, what is happening? What is going on? Spencer Strider placed in the IL. We'll talk pitching and we'll talk about the offense looking a little bit better, fresh off a sweep of Minnesota at home. So, Logan, without further ado, happy belated Easter to you and yours.
same to you.
And Spencer Strider on the IL with a hamstring issue. I told my wife this. She texted it to me literally 15 minutes ago. She goes, "Doesn't he? But isn't he like a health freak? Like, doesn't he take care of his body? What is this to you? Because this is just like I wouldn't say he was dominant against Toronto. He was good. They couldn't hit, but just your thoughts on Strider placed on the IL and what it means."
Well, the quads are too big. Something had to compensate for that, I think. And it turns out the hamstring, man. The hamstring was the issue the whole time. Who knew? No, it's just, again, you can't help but laugh at this season. Like, you laugh to keep from crying. That's honestly this season in a nutshell. And it's just one other thing, because this whole season, it's like, yeah, Strider will be back, Acuna will be back, and you kind of have a little bit of hope. And that hope is still there, but we still have to be patient and wait on that. And certainly doesn't help when the team's record is what it is. But as you mentioned, something's starting to turn around. Hopefully, just all I'm hoping for, all I ask is a fully healthy Braves team. But by the time that happens, it's not too late.
Yeah,
That's all I'm hoping for at this
yeah,
point.
yeah. And okay, to that point, like we look, injuries are a part of baseball, right?
It's true.
It's I will tell you this: 15-day IL. He sustained the injury while playing catch before the Braves game tonight. Now we're recording this on Monday. It's going to come out before the Cardinals game, or right around the Braves are playing the Cardinals tonight. So nothing about that really kind of what's happening. It's a right hamstring strain. So my wife's not in here, but a strain, the definition, okay, is a tear, a pull, or a stretch. It's not a tear. So that being said, I guess you're not looking at a potential torn hamstring here. With all of our accolades in the medical field that we have combined together, Logan. But this is something which is obviously concerning, right? Because hamstring, at least he's not a base runner. But in all seriousness, I think that you got to be realistic about this. We'll talk pitching here in a second. Strider is a guy that pitched against Toronto, looked pretty good, like we mentioned, but just kind of going forward, man, they have to have a healthy rotation, and he has to be a part of this. And you're kind of dealing with an injury that, look, we've seen a lot of guys deal with hamstring injuries. I don't know if this is just a 10-day thing and he's back, or if this is going to extend into the month of May to where, like you mentioned, you want to see a fully healthy team. When do you see a 100% Spencer Strider back this season? And I think that this type of injury, you really, truly don't know.
Yeah, that is a hard thing to know. You hope that it's he's truly back to form. If this is a short term thing, you really hope he's truly back to form. Because again, it's not just a hamstring; it's also coming back from a pretty serious arm injury too. That
Mm-hmm.
He was finally ramping up, and it looked like in the Toronto game that he still wasn't quite the Spencer Strider that we know and love. But over time, you would expect him to return back to form the more that he gets ramped up, the more innings he tosses, the more pitches he throws. So again, you kind of hope it's maybe all-star break by the time that he truly is there 100%. But again, it's kind of hard to know at this point, and you kind of just hope and pray that it's and again, thankfully this isn't an arm injury that he's going to the injured list for. I feel like there'd be a lot more questions. But again, it's still slightly concerning, but
Yeah.
it just kind of pushes back the timeline as to when you expect him to be Spencer Strider again.
Yeah, kind of going back to the elbow injury, bone fragment, that essentially UCL injury, but not a true tear of the UCL, like he had something weird going on in that elbow that he was sidelined from April of last year throughout the whole season. Comes back, makes the one start, had looked good in rehab starts. And to your point, Logan, I think it's one of those things where had nothing really else to prove in AAA. Like he's talented enough where a 70% Spencer Strider is going to overwhelm AAA hitters, gets the major leagues, gives up some knocks to the Blue Jays, but overall pitched well enough to win. The Braves couldn't hit. That's a shocker to everybody I know. So it's one of those things where Strider gets hurt. I do like what you said, because if you can get him back by June the 1st, and that's what we're looking at, essentially almost 40 days away. If you can get him back by June the 1st, then I'm okay. And I've said this multiple times. Come back to me at Memorial Day weekend. That's when I feel like you get a true testament of who the team is. We'll talk more about that in a second. But where would you feel comfortable getting him back? I mean, obviously 10 days would be awesome, but I don't know, even if they activate him, Logan, I wouldn't expect him to go out there and toss 7 innings of one hit baseball.
Right. Yeah. And again, I'm kind of with you. If it is June 1st, I feel okay. But you would really hope that this rotation and the bullpen too, for that matter, you would hope that they're able to at least perform average until he does get back.
Yeah.
Because again, the hope of this team for me, it's the hitting. Are they able to get back to what they were in 2022, 2023? And right now, I don't know. But if the pitching, and again, it's the same storyline, I feel like, over the past few seasons for the Braves. If the pitching can somehow just have solid performances from your top line guys, but it's not the top line guys you're worried about. It's
Mm-hmm.
the bottom half of that rotation and the bullpen. Those are the two biggest concerns right now. And same thing with Strider. I think that, again, if it's June 1st that he comes back, and the Braves are in a spot where they're still in the hunt, which you feel like, that's a likely thing at this
Yeah.
point. And I think you feel good about it, as good as you can feel, because again, it feels like there are just so many things that are volatile with this team right now that you just don't know. It's a wild card, genuinely a wild card at this point.
And it's a perfect segue. That's why he's on TV, to talk about the pitching, because this is something where, coming off of this weekend in Minnesota, let's get it out of the way. Man, it felt good to win a series. It felt good to win back-to-back games, and it felt good to get a series sweep over a team a lot of people had thought was maybe the favorite in the AL Central, which I don't know how much that means to a lot of people in terms of that division overall, especially with a team like the White Sox that you have in that division. But I digress. The pitching in general, Logan, you know, I thought that the bullpen was really good this past weekend, and bullpen is also a very volatile subject with this team, with this franchise. They did not, like we've said multiple times, they didn't really go invest heavy into the bullpen. That was a concern of yours. Uh, when you kind of look at what they were able to do, look, Rafael Montero had I thought, one of probably his biggest moment. Definitely his biggest moment as a Brave on Saturday, when he's able to kind of limit the damage, bases loaded, one out, and is able to get out of it. I do like the celebration, the little golf fist pump that he has coming off the mound. He gets out of it. His stuff plays. It's about consistency, right? Daysbel Hernandez nearly threw a ball into the second deck in first base when he slipped off the mound. But you're seeing that why they really like his stuff. And I think as he gets more comfortable, they think he could be a guy for them in those middle to late innings. And then you have De Los Santos, who I think is going to be the rubber arm for as long as he can be for this team. They're going to throw him out there, 10 appearances already for him. So altogether, sticking with that bullpen, it's getting to a point where you're like, it's serviceable, okay? Like, and then they obviously make the trade. What a name, by the way. Blewett, Mr. Blewett, is going to be in the Braves bullpen. Blewett and Bummer. I mean, you just have to love the makeup of this roster. But just in general, you got Blewett. Peterson comes up from the minor league ranks. Craig Kimbrell throwing darts down there in Double A. But in all seriousness, where do you kind of sit with this bullpen? Is that it looks better this weekend, and that's an encouraging sign.
Yeah, very encouraging for sure. And the stuff is there, which is nice. Montero's been a nice addition. And I think Anthopoulos, for me, it feels like over the offseason and even into the season, it feels like he was kind of dumpster diving a little bit through potential bullpen options as well as corner outfield options as well.
Yeah.
And so that's something that, is interesting to me, because you kind of wonder, okay, is he trying to find these stopgap options to prevent maybe having to trade for a bigger piece at the deadline or something along those lines. But right now, the biggest concern I have with the bullpen is just the fact that okay, still to me there doesn't feel like a solid AJ Minter replacement, and that's something that to me is very concerning because Minter has looked good in New York, and
Mhm.
the Braves need that solid lefty out of the bullpen. And Bummer is certainly one of those options, but outside of Aaron Bummer, there's just not. And Dylan Lee too. Dylan Lee's had a couple of good outings
Yeah.
to this point in the season, but outside of those two, I feel like you need one or two more good arms, and right now you just don't really see that out of the bullpen.
You don't see it out of the bullpen, and I think it puts a lot of pressure, and we can talk about this too because, I mean, you kinda mentioned this. They have a lot of pressure on them with the starting pitching not really going deep. I mean, Chris Sale has not been himself. He's also been pretty vocal, both on the mound and in front of the
Yep,
press about how he's not happy with what he's been doing and not living up to that, but I think you and I both said we expect a little bit of regression out of what he
sure.
did, this past year. A lot of unlucky kind of stuff happening to Sale when you kind of get into the analytics of what's going on. But I think that this starting, and we can talk starting rotation here for a second. The rotation outside of Schwellenbach, like Smith Shawver has looked deep good. I think I'll just be real, but I think you're playing house money with Grant Holmes. I don't think. I mean, like maybe that's rude. I don't know. Like I just kind of think he is a perfect long relief guy, in my opinion. On a championship team, I think Grant Holmes is the long relief guy. Maybe I eat my words, and the Braves are a championship team with him starting Game 4 of the World Series. I have no idea. Pray to God we don't enter that situation. Actually, I do. I'd love to be in the World Series, but
Be great. Yeah.
it'd be great, regardless of how you get there. But I do think that you're kind of playing house money with him. Schwellenbach has looked, really good. Smith Shawver has the stuff, but outside of that, you're down two starters essentially. And, I just don't really know where you go inside the organization to fix this problem long term. We can piecemeal it together here through April and maybe May. But I'll tell you one thing. I do think the Braves are going to have to be one of the first teams to make a move, which could set the market, which could set a precedent for what the rest of the trade season is going to look like. Is I don't know if you can wait if you're Atlanta much longer to find some stability in the rotation because that also is going to have an effect on the bullpen.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, you're definitely feeling the hole from when Max Fried and Charlie Morton are both
Freed's
gone.
been really good, by the way.
Yeah, Fried's been good. Charlie Morton, not so much.
Yeah.
So you take the good and the bad there. And again, the whole thing with Max Fried, which, to me, is this sustainable in New York? Which it probably could be for the next few years. But contract, gosh, I
Yeah.
don't blame the Braves for not doing that. But
Yeah.
going back to the point though, you're absolutely right. That does create the problem of lack of stability in the rotation. Can you truly rely on these guys to fill those holes? And to me, AJ Smith Shawver, I'm very curious what the strategy is here for the Braves as far as okay, Bryce Elder's getting starts over him to this point. I don't like that. I'm not a big fan of that. To me, with the Braves where they are right now, I don't see the harm in giving Smith Shawver that number 5 spot in the rotation just to let him learn at a big league level. But again, they're much smarter than I am when it comes to this. But that's something I'm just curious about because Smith Shawver is supposed to be your top prospect as far as pitching goes.
Mhm.
I don't know what's going to happen. Plus, this is something that will be unique to me because again, we talk about the Braves and their lack of depth as far as bench options go in the lineup. Drake Baldwin's been an awesome piece, but do you see him get traded for either a rotation arm or someone who's a part of a bigger deal that includes maybe an elite bullpen option?
Mhm.
That's something where I'm curious to see where they go if they do go the trade route. Which Anthopoulos, he's made a lot of very small trades, but is this a year that he really pulls the trigger on some sort of blockbuster deal? Historically, that hasn't necessarily been him since he's become the Braves general manager, but
Yeah.
maybe it's different. Maybe it is different this year, but I don't know. I don't think you see it for pitching necessarily with him. He just hasn't done it.
He hasn't done. I'm trying to think of the blockbuster trades. Obviously comes to mind Matt Olson, which was I don't want to say reactionary, but it really was. It was a response
Yeah,
to Freeman leaving to go to LA. The Sean Murphy trade, obviously you see a bat there as well. and I know people love to talk about that 2021 season, but in in the scope of what those were small moves. Those weren't deemed massive blockbuster trades. Now they paid off pretty well for you, obviously, but they weren't seen as earth-shattering moves. Going back to the pitching with Bryce Elder, I'm thoroughly convinced, Logan, that this is the strategy with this team, because we saw it with Ian Anderson through spring training, and we've seen it with a couple of other guys. They are going to they're going to, and I hate to refer to another human as this, but it's like it's a rag, and they are going to wring out everything they think they can get out of you before moving on. And I get it, because a lot of pitchers figure it out at different moments in time. And maybe it's because Atlanta, had a guy like Charlie Morton who didn't figure it out till after he left Atlanta, the first time around, and they don't want to miss out on that. And I get that. Pitching is a premium; it's something very hard to go and find, and if you find it, you've got to pay a lot to retain that.
It's an interesting trend too.
Yeah.
I mean, Kevin Gausman was another guy.
Perfect example.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I feel like the Braves have kind of historically been recently. I feel like they've been either a year or two too early when it comes to these guys. But sometimes it does take that change of scenery to truly unlock something. And so I don't know. I don't know why that is, but it is interesting. You brought up Morton, and then Kevin Gausman just popped to mind too. On that.
LSU Tiger, Kevin Gausman.
That's right.
No, I that's just where I sit with it, because it's like, we're sitting there scratching our heads. Oh, Logan, I mean, I didn't talk to you a bunch this weekend watching the game, but I know when we saw this past week when Bryce Elder pitched, it's just like, why? Like, why are we doing this? Like, why are we running this out here? And I really, like, the thing I'm coming up with is, like, they want to make sure that there's nothing there. I don't. That sounds terrible, but it's like they want to literally make sure that there's nothing there to work with until they say, hey, we have resorted. We feel like we've done all we can. Let's get you to a chain. Let's ship you to Chicago and the White Sox, not the Cubs, the White Sox, and see if they can utilize you, which they might do that. They kind of did that with Soroka, coming off the injury, they gave him every opportunity. Ian Anderson, to the point where he was just walking so many people, you can't throw him out there in a game.
Right.
I would say this: it would surprise me on the current trajectory to see Bryce Elder be in this rotation on June the 1st. Like I don't think he. What would that be like? 4 or 5 more starts?
Yeah,
maybe. So
gotta be 4 or 5 starts too many at this point. I'm done with him.
He just does. This is the thing, man. He just doesn't have anything elite that he uses, and there's nothing that's elite in terms of his stuff. It's just good in term. And I don't think he's an awful pitcher. I just don't think he has swing and miss stuff, and you have to have that in today's day and age of baseball. So the pitching is a concern. Starting rotation, you heard us talk about that. The bullpen picked up the slack this past weekend, I think, in Minnesota, and then obviously you have that. Kind of looking ahead tonight, it's going to be a guy that I really kind of would have liked to see Atlanta signed, and you can correct me wrong here, Logan, on the name pronunciation, but Eric Fetty pitching against Atlanta. Felt like that was a perfect back into the rotation option they could have got at the deadline last year. He's going against Spencer Schwellenbach. That game, as we're recording this, at 5:30 Central Time on Monday. That game will probably start by the time you see this and over. Andre Palante going to be on the mound for the Cardinals, and obviously Atlanta scratched Strider, so we'll see who's going to be pitching. And then Miles Michaelis against Bryce Elder, a 7.64 ERA against a 7.20 ERA. So hide your children. Baby Eddie will not be watching that game.
Stoppable force versus the movable object.
I think it's two movable objects that are just going to be moved. I don't even know what it is. It's interesting. So that'll be interesting. Atlanta has not laid out their plans for this weekend after they head to Chase Field for the series at Arizona. Last order of business here, Logan. The offense is the offense turning a corner, and the reason I say this was we've watched enough of this season to know that not only was Atlanta not hitting, they weren't really even putting pressure on opposing pitching and defense really all that much. And I watched the game on Friday night and was watching it with family, and my dad and I were just sitting there like, what is this? Like, this is, up until that 8th inning, it felt like just, copy and paste from what we had seen the past 3 weeks. And then something clicked. And from the 8th inning to essentially when they won the game on Sunday, it looked like a totally different offense. Now, it's just a 2-game. Let me do the math real quick. 9 plus 9, that's 18 plus 2. Okay, 20, around 19, 20 inning sample size. But it did feel like it created some confidence. The guys got to get back home, the weather warming up there in Atlanta. altogether, they put pressure on the opposing defense. Drake Baldwin felt comfortable. Matt Olson put together some really good at-bats, I felt like. Nick Allen making plays in the field and scrapping together some hits. Alex Verdugo, what goes 0 for 5 on Friday, by the way, but barreled some balls up, then just is rewarded the next 2 days. They put him in the leadoff spot. What's your take on this offense over the past 20 innings or so? And is it enough for you to say, hey, maybe they found something this week and they can carry them the rest, going into the future?
Very nice of them to show up. Very, very nice of them to show up. Welcome to the season. Glad to have you here. But yeah, it is interesting to me. Some of it, for me, the way my mind works, I kind of analytical in some ways as far as stats based and everything like that. My first thought was, okay, like we're finally getting some positive regression here, because there's no way this team could hit this bad for the entire season. There's no way this team could be putrid with runners in scoring position like this all season, especially with the talent that is there, how they usually have performed throughout their careers. It was just very, very bad. And I know the concern level, last year is one thing to look at it as an anomaly, but you see that trend continue to start the season and you wonder, is this just the normal? Is this just how the team looks, how the team is now? But to see this recent stretch is very encouraging. And hypothetically, theoretically, they play the Cardinals, who just got swept by the Mets. Their pitching in that series was not great at all. Francisco Lindor killed them all series long. Juan Soto looked like he was getting back to form during that series as well. And so to see the Braves this series, Palante's had a decent stretch over the past couple of series, but he's not a guy that you look at and go, yeah, he is a guy that the Braves are just not going to do anything against. He's at best, to me, a middle of the line starter. So, and again, I could say that, and the Braves could get one hit against him, because that's just been the Atlanta Braves to this point. Like they've had games. That's been the frustrating part too. It's not just the inconsistency; it's just underperforming against guys that you would expect them to just kill at the dish.
Yeah.
There have been a couple starts against AAA guys that were just called up, and for some reason, just 5-6 innings of dominant baseball against them. So you hope that the Braves of the Twins series, from as you mentioned, the 8th inning on all the way to the end of the series, you hope that this is the normal, and I feel like it is in some ways. And now, again, it's just one of those deals where we're at this point in the season, and you ask us about the offense, and I'm kind of shrugging my shoulders at this point, because I do not know what to expect out of this team on any given night. But as you mentioned, Verdugo's been a nice addition to this point. You wonder if Verdugo of last year starts to creep in a little bit the more at-bats he gets in a Braves uniform. Because, again, I think it might be an overreaction to say this guy is just like Jorge Soler was for us a couple years ago, and that Rosario and that range of guys. I think it's too early to put him in that category. But the Braves don't need him to be this elite contributor at the dish. He's basically just kind of keeping a spot warm for Acuna and Profar whenever they both come back too. So I think that is important to keep in mind.
Yeah. I did want to add this, Logan, to what you just said. And I tweeted this from the Chopaholic account. Make sure you follow us over there at the Chopaholic. Is there a chance we could look back, and maybe we can? A lot of people have talked about the lack of spunk, the lack of flair from this Braves team. I mean, I'll just be real, a little bit of lack of the FU mentality that they kind of had in 2021 with Jock Peterson. And, Peterson, if you go back and look at it truthfully, Peterson wasn't like this all-world player during that run. He had big moments, right? Like he had the home run against the Brewers, the home run against Scherzer and the Dodgers. But he wasn't this all-world player. I think it's him and a guy like Stephen Vogt, who's obviously now managing, what they brought to the team in terms of the mentality. They're going to get that back when Acuna's there. We're going to talk. I wanted to ask you about the Acuna-Kelenic situation to round the show out here, but Verdugo has that. Like, if you go back and look at some of the stuff that he did when he was in Boston, LA, New York, like, he's got a little bit of that flair, a little bit of that cockiness, a little bit of swagger that I just kind of think this team's missing a little bit. And that's a very it's a very interesting divide, I think, between the Braves fan base, because the Braves franchise is one. It's not the Yankees of the old, of like button up, suit and tie type of mentality,
Sure.
but it is a little bit like that, in terms of this is the way you do things, the Braves way. I feel like Acuna, Ozzy, a lot of these guys have kind of turned that on its head a little bit, and you lose Ron Washington, you don't have him, you lose EY, maybe that's an effect, but I don't know, man. Like I don't think Verdugo is going to be the MVP of this team, but he could be a guy that even if he's not starting for you, just provides some type of edge to this team that maybe I don't think they've had since the start of last year. One more name I don't forget about: Guillermo Heredia. Seriously, like just those guys that make it fun, right? And so I don't know. Is there any thoughts on that you could look back and say, man, Verdugo? Yeah, he only hit 230 with Atlanta, and we're not bringing him back, but maybe he was key to the locker room and lighting a fire under some of these guys. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a world where that happens. Certainly, all I'm hoping for him is that he can be the first guy the Braves bring in off the bench, or someone who can spot start on a day and give Acuna or Profar a day off. That's all I'm hoping for, and I think that's what Anthopoulos was looking for too, because it wasn't just Verdugo he brought in; it was De La Cruz that he hoped would provide anything at all, and the answer to that was no. And as well as Stuart Fairchild, which again, public enemy number 2, I think at this point in Atlanta. But I think there is a world that exists, and I'm glad that Verdugo has provided something. And maybe people can look back to this hot stretch that Verdugo has been on and be like, okay, this was kind of a turning point for us. It was, you're not relying on the heavy hitters in the lineup to provide everything. Verdugo definitely helped, and I think a lot of people were raising their eyebrows when Verdugo was hitting leadoff whenever that change was made. But hey, give all the credit to him. He's handled that role exceptionally well to this point.
Saturday's performance was crazy, man. 4 for 4, couple extra base hits, ripping the ball. I was looking at his launch angle. He didn't have a launch angle above 20 degrees, so it's a very flat path to the ball. He's hitting line drives, and you know what? Why not, man? Just drive a ball 110 miles an hour into the gap and let's keep moving forward. Like I'm okay with that. And to Snicker's credit, I mean, a lot of people want to bag on Snicker for a lot of things. He's not been afraid to put different guys in the lineup that are not your traditional leadoff hitters. Sure. So if that's what kickstarts it, he looks like a genius, I guess.
Yeah,
so,
and that's baseball now too, because you were seeing a lot of non-traditional leadoff hitters. I mean, that's just the way baseball's going right now.
Yeah, I miss the days of like Jose Reyes and Luis Castillo leading off for the Mets. That was a lot of fun. So it is what it is. No Rafael Furcal in the league now. So wanted to talk about this real quick. Let's get, before we get out of here and get ready for the game tonight and get you to dinner, Logan. So real quick, the Acuna Kelenic situation, you threw it in the Discord. Make sure you come join the Discord. A lot of just interesting conversation that happens on a day-to-day basis that I'm sure Logan wishes he wasn't a part of. But in all seriousness, the Acuna Kelenic situation. So for those that don't know, Kelenic doesn't hustle out a ball, gets thrown out, he's out. And then Brian Snicker, I think, angered the Twitter mob about this because of his, maybe, what'd you call it, a lack of response, Logan, to really the situation?
Yeah.
And then
he was yeah, it seemed like he was very defensive of Kelenic at first. And, Acuna responds with, if that were me, I would have been benched pretty much. And he had a point. I really do think, fair. Yeah, it's a very fair statement, but legitimately turns out that Dicker, whenever he responded in defense, it was a genuine question and not. I think the question was, did you have a conversation with Kelenic, or, what would you say to Kelenic? And Snicker's like, well, why? What should I say? Like, what should I have done? It turns out he was legitimately asking.
He's real,
he
man.
had no idea.
Is there a conversation where Paul Snit wasn't really watching?
Yeah. Why do you not know? Why do you not know, Brian?
I don't know. Like, that was kind of weird. That was
it makes sense why because Acuna deleted that tweet that he had. So probably some conversations were had, I would assume. And Kelenic, good on Kelenic for taking initiative and going to Snitker's office to be like, hey, that's on me. I I pipped this home run that I thought was a home run, but turns out it was a loud single, and I got thrown out at second. That's my bad.
Yeah, it's
Just a
I don't
weird
want
situation.
I mean, I say I'm not even joking. Like I may be a little bit being a little bit facetious here, but like Paul Snit, like I don't think he was paying attention, and he really wasn't. Like he literally said that.
Snoozing in the dugout.
David O'Brien asked the question, right? Okay, in the post game presser, and then I don't know if it was Toscano or who it was that asked the follow up, and just wild. Man, I don't know. Like, I mean, we'll talk about Snicker more through this year. I really do think this is it. I think this is
his last year.
this is
There's
his last
no
year.
way it's not.
Yeah, there's no way it's not. So, yeah, I mean, it is what it is. But yeah,
future special assistant to the Braves, Brian Snicker.
Oh yeah, like I mean, head down to spring training, bring the grandkids out to BP, kind of thing. I mean, look, Brian Snicker, we said this on an earlier episode, will always live in Braves lore, right? Won a World Series with the team, has been there since the Kingdom Come and since they were the Boston Bean Eaters, just about. So it is what it is. No, I'm kidding, but just to see, I don't know, it's just funny to me because I'm very much a Snicker apologist. Like I am. I think that managers don't have a massive outcome on the results of games, but then when they do, it blows up on Twitter. But to see the response of, well, what should I have said? And then the later aspect of the press conference just being, I guess it was the next day. Is that right? Like
the next day.
The next day,
really the next
just being like, yeah, I didn't see it. Like,
could you imagine Snicker? Imagine Snicker going home after the press conference, like,
what are they talking about?
What do they mean? Oh dear God.
Yeah, he goes and says, look, by the way, he goes and says that he like walks in the next morning is the first thing he watches. I guarantee you there was an intern, video manager that said, we need to, Schiller himself, sat there and said, you need to watch this. Like, so it's crazy, interesting stuff.
Blissfully unaware, Brian Snicker, just not on social media, doesn't have a care in the world.
No, I mean, the only Snicker presence on social media I've ever seen is what Snicker's mustache. So
the legend,
legendary Braves Twitter. So. But no, it'll be interesting. Braves Cardinals probably first pitch as this thing's posted underway. 3-game series against St. Louis. Then they'll have an off day on Thursday. Head to Arizona for this weekend. But hey, look, 6.5 out of first place. They are what 8-12. Am I right in that?
8-13.
8-13. So look, I mean, long season. Playing some good baseball over the past 3 days. Can see that can continue. That would be very, very nice. We appreciate you watching, tuning in, and listening. That is Logan Whaley. My name is Bryce Kuhn, and we will catch you next time here on the Chopaholic Podcast.